Hi, I'm Ella Kuhn, Planning Fellow at the Capital Area Architectural and Planning Board. We are here today to hold a public hearing regarding a request to modify the World War I plaque on the Minnesota State Capitol grounds. The public hearing specifically concerns whether this modification request meets the conditions for modification as defined in Minnesota Rules 2400, 2703, Subpart 6. Specifically, the application seeks to make the plaque's language more inclusive of military service personnel from Minnesota who trained for but never saw combat during the First World War. We received the application from Michael Maxa, adjunct at the American Legion, on April 1st, 2026. Staff found the application complete on April 9th. The request for modification is supported by legislation passed by the Minnesota State Legislature in 2019, and the American Legion will provide funding for the modification. Modification requests must meet at least one condition for modification from our rules to be considered by the board. These conditions are outlined in Subpart 6 of Minnesota Rules 2400, 2703, and to paraphrase, these conditions include a sustained, broad-based, and documented objection to the artwork as it currently stands. B, evidence that the artwork conflicts with the guiding principles as defined in Subpart 1, Item A of the rules, that is, that commemorative works on the Capitol grounds must reflect the state's diverse history and people. C, the artwork can no longer be properly cared for by the Department of Administration due to construction or maintenance issues. D, the artwork site can no longer be accessed safely. And E, significant changes in the use, character, or design of the site require a reevaluation of the relationship of the artwork to the site. Of relevance for us today is condition A, the application, demonstration of sustained, broad-based, and documented public objection to the artwork in its current form. It is the opinion of the CAP board staff that Mr. Max's application meets this condition. As Mr. Max highlights in his application, starting over 10 years ago, Minnesota veterans groups took objection to the language on the World War I plaque, and specifically its explicit memorialization of the 57,413 Minnesotans who actively saw combat during this global conflict. This figure did not include the over 50,000 service personnel from Minnesota who trained for combat but were never deployed. These veterans groups and their state representatives commenced a legislative effort to rectify this oversight by modifying the plaque to make it more inclusive of those service members supporting the war effort at home. A series of bills were introduced in the Minnesota State Legislature connected to this effort, culminating in the ratification of House File 810 in the spring of 2019. Some other information regarding the work in question. The World War I plaque is located at the Court of Honor on the Minnesota State Capitol grounds. The Court of Honor is a curved outdoor plaza just north of the Veterans Service Building. The perimeter of this court features bronze memorial plaques honoring veterans and veterans groups from a selection of wars, as well as Minnesotan civilians who lost their lives during armed conflict. Furthermore, modification requests such as Mr. Max's must follow a set application and review process as defined in the CAP board standards for commemorative artwork. Here's a graphic representation of this process. It is divided into 3 stages: review of the memorial concept, review by a commemorative artwork review committee, and design review. As you can see, the application is still in its early stages of review. And following this public hearing, Mr. Max's application will go before the board once more, where they will take these comments into consideration when determining if the application will proceed to the next stage of review, which is the CAAAPB. So in other words, we're still in the review of concept. The CAAAPB committee is centered on evaluating more technical and substantive aspects of the modification request and features professionals in art conservation, history, public art, and so on. And an additional public hearing or more is associated with the CAAPB process to solicit further public input on the application and specifically the committee's findings. We are asking today for your feedback on the application's fulfillment of the conditions for modification as outlined in our rules, which are again pictured here for your reference. As a reminder, modification requests must fulfill at minimum one condition for modification for consideration by the board. We would like to, in particular, draw your attention to condition A. To make a comment. If you would like to make a comment and in the room with us here today, please raise your hand and you will be asked to comment. When it is your turn to speak, please state your name for the record, if you should so choose. And comments should be kept to 3 to 5 minutes. If you have not signed in already, there is a sign-up sheet located on the table next to us. If you have joined us online and would like to make a comment, here is the process for doing that. We would ask you to raise your hand virtually, and when you're called on, click the mute unmute button to first unmute yourself, and followed by a mute of yourself at the end of your comment. And this is the process for making a comment by a mobile phone, although I do not believe that we have anybody joining by a mobile phone. Okay, we are now opening the public hearing. Seeing as there are no further comments, we are now closing the public hearing. Thank you.